Something's going on with the Texans' interior of their offensive line, and they just gave the Jets new hope. Me and my man Matt Williams are going to talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That is right. Welcome into the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am the host, the barber, Tony Wiggins, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Matt Williamson. Here's what we're going to discuss today, man. We're going to discuss game of the week, which is the Packers and the Lions, and then we'll do a whip around, a preview as we end the show, as always, right in the middle. Got some Locked On Eagles dudes that says A.J. Brown might be an MVP candidate. What? Come on, Louis. But we're going to talk about it and tell you who the real MVP candidate is of that team. And then the Texans give the Jets life. I thought it wasn't even going to be possible to happen, but guess what? That's what happens in football, man. We appreciate you for making us the first listen of the day, for being an everyday here on Locked On NFL, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to tune in again to Locked On NFL on Monday morning for Tyler, the Madman Rolling, for more NFL coverage. Today's episode is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. That's right. Man, all you got to do is download the Game Time app, man. And when you download the Game Time app, guess what happens? You get over there and you realize exactly what it's all about. Best tickets you will ever find are at Game Time. Make sure you download the app and use Locked On NFL when you get there. All right, Matt, last night, the impossible seemed to happen. The NFL is the NFL for a reason. The Jets seemed like they were on a free fall, and all of a sudden in walks a team with a bad offensive line, and voila, just like that, they look competent again.
Yeah, I don't know that I came away impressed with either team. I mean, Aaron Rodgers had 32 passing yards at the half. I mean, there was a lot of ugliness that we become too associated with Thursday night football. And real quick, Wig, I mean, we have one game in the book before the trade deadline, and I thought the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Bengals pretty much had to win this week to not be sellers. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like to stay alive in what looks like a weak AFC. So they're sort of a desperate team, but something's missing with Houston. And what I really felt in this game was some of the Jets stars, Garrett Wilson, Quinnen Williams, their two edge guys, Reddick and McDonald, who's racking up sacks left and right, really came to shine here in a moment when they needed them bad. And you mentioned it, man. I mean, that offensive line for Houston is problematic. I mean, Tunsil is playing injured and is leading the league in penalties. The interior is a problem and has been, especially at left guard, all year. Mm-hmm. But one thing I really noticed was, I didn't watch the all 22 or anything, but I don't think anybody's getting open. Stroud's back there patting the ball, looking around even when he had time, and I don't think anybody's getting open for him. And they didn't talk about that enough on the coverage, but I promise you that's what was going on without Nico and Diggs.
Yeah, and it's hard for any team to lose that many weapons. They may have to do something else, like turn to Joe Mixon and his legs to get them powered through until they can at least get Nico back. Listen to John Hickman for Locked On Texans.
Pressure bust pipes, and the New York Jets flooded Houston Texans and C.J. Stroud with pressure all night. I'm John Hickman of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Listen here, when you have a quarterback that's getting sacked 8 times, that's a problem. The New York Jets really did damage on a banged up and inconsistent offensive line for the Houston Texans. And on top of that, that pressure seemed to be getting to C.J. Stroud as it affected his throws down the field, and he was really off as a passer. Missed several big opportunities to help the Houston Texans score points to keep this game closer than what it really was. Make sure you continue to listen and watch the Locked On Texan podcast throughout the week as we continue to bring you Texans Talk Monday through Friday, your team every day.
My man John is right when he talks about Houston. I've always said, man, the offensive line can really, it can do a number on people. Now, here's what I'm talking about. They were talking about C.J. Stroud being an MVP candidate, and people were talking about Bobby Slowick, the way that they talk about Ben Johnson up in Detroit. And I'm going to tell you something. injuries and poor offensive line play got both of those guys looking real funny in the light right now, Matt.
Yeah, and Slowick to me is maybe coming back to earth and truly what he is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's shown that he has answers. They haven't been able to run the ball unless they hand it to Mixon. So the other backs have not done anything for them all year, and Mixon looks great. I think Stroud was playing injured for a lot of that game. I mean, he took some shots early, and to be very frank, he's the least of my concerns with that entire organization. I think wasn't his best game, but I think he is raising those around him to the best of his abilities for a second-year player as he can.
I do. I'm going to get to some good news for the Jets. We've been beating up on the Jets, and my man Butchko, John Lee, we've been beating up on him for a while because the Jets have just been nothing but like a punchline in comedy. They finally looked good last night, and I'm going to let my boy talk about it.
The Jets dress up as a real football team on Halloween. I'm John, the host of Locked On Jets, and the New York Jets have ended their 5-game losing streak, defeating the Houston Texans 21-13 on Thursday Night Football. It was not a good first half for the Jets. They trailed 7-0 heading into the locker room. They had only 32 passing yards in the first 2 quarters and a number of unforced errors, most notably Malachi Corley prematurely celebrating a touchdown, dropping the ball at the 1-yard line and the ball rolling out of the end zone for a touchback. But the Jets were able to overcome their errors with a strong second half. Aaron Rodgers had 3 touchdown passes in the second half. 2 of them were spectacular catches by Garrett Wilson. Devontae Adams also added a touchdown reception, and the Jets defense got 8 sacks on C.J. Stroud. It's going to be a long road back for the Jets at 3-6, but at least for one night, Jets fans can celebrate because the 5-game losing streak is over. For more on the Jets, tune into the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Matt, do you think it's possible with Buffalo being a little bit banged up with them trying to incorporate their new wide receiver, Amari Cooper, and with Miami showing you and those teams playing each other, is it possible? Is it at all possible for the Jets to really turn this around and take this thing one game at a time and win that division?
No to winning the division, but to getting in the top 7 in the AFC, I think that's very possible. I mean, teams like Denver and the Chargers ahead of them, to me, are not very drastic speed bumps. I mean, I think that the AFC is there for the taking in terms of wild cards. I just think Buffalo's a much better team than the Jets.
Yeah, so do I. And it was good for one night, though. We've been beating up on the Jets. Yeah, we've been beating up on the Jets, and my man Butchko, we've been taking them to the cleaners because they deserved everything everybody said about them too. But no, a good game. Turned out Garrett Wilson can really, really play. He made some spectacular catches. Sometimes just having a decent night kind of shows you exactly who you are and what you're capable of. And I know that a lot of teams want to figure that out at this point in the season. All right.
Real quick, he mentioned the Corley play where he dropped it before he went in the end zone. I'm glad, I wanted to bring that up earlier because
go ahead.
I mean, as unexcusable as that is, 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 times, it doesn't happen, and that game's even less close. You know what I mean?
Right. And I liked him in the draft too. I know there was some concern about his speed, but I thought he was a run after the catch guy. He will never, I guarantee you, he will never, ever prematurely drop a ball again going into the end zone. It will not happen. But I agree with you. He at least showed that he can make that play, though. He just has to finish the play and not make that play. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pivot and talk about a team up in Philadelphia. They play the Jaguars this week, and it's a Doug Peterson homecoming. But more importantly, somebody in Philly thinks that A.J. Brown should be considered an MVP candidate, maybe, as a non-quarterback. We'll talk about it, and we'll do that here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Game Time. Listen, man, get your tickets. And you don't have to rush and get them. You can get them at the last minute at Game Time. But make sure you have the Game Time app, because the Game Time app will help you filter through a whole lot of fluff and get you right to the tickets that you want to buy. I don't care if it's to a football game, basketball game. I can't say World Series because that's over, but they got theater, monster trucks, wrestling, whatever you want, Game Time has it. They have priority Game Time picks, all in pricing, seat views, the lowest price guarantee, all of that stuff at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And today's show is brought to you and sponsored by 5 Hour Energy. Man, it takes a lot to be a fan, especially when your team is losing, but you're still going to tailgate. You're still going to cook your hot dogs and burgers and get out there and cheer, and then you still got to drive home. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing overtime or Hail Mary defeat. What's up, Chicago? All right, this is what you got to do. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy, whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey. Your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited time Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy, available at 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, running it down with Matt Williamson here on Locked On NFL in the barbershop. I gotta play this, man, because it's gonna lead to a bigger conversation. But I love when people come with an idea and a thought, and you're like, what? But then when they really, really break it down to show you how valuable a player is to his team, Matt, and that's exactly what Lou DiBiase. I disagree with Lou from Locked On Eagles, but I like the sentiment. So that's going to lead us into MVP talk in just a second.
It's hard sometimes to come up with different talking points about them when they're so good all of the time. But I'm seeing all these A.J. Brown stats on X every single day, how he's number one against single man coverage. Like, you cannot put a corner on him man to man. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be prime Deion Sanders for this point. And at this point, and Brown's going to win. Like, he is almost unguardable right now. He's one of the last big elite receivers in the league, but he's still an elite route runner, run after the catch, blocker. He's everything for this football team. And I think he just needs to be appreciated. And I was like, I want to talk about A.J. Brown today. How do I spin it? Well, there we go. There's our angle. If there was an award that went to an MVP of a team and it wasn't a quarterback award, like quarterbacks weren't allowed to have it, A.J. Brown, he makes a good case to win that.
Now, I'm going to temper my thoughts on the subject, because he said something very, very correct. He said, if there's an award for team MVP, and that means that might not be the guy with a lot of stats. That just might be the dude that everybody in that building knows is that dude. A.J. Brown absolutely might qualify for that, even though he only has 400 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. The stats don't matter. Sometimes guys are just that guy.
Yes, and it's been kind of a down year for the stud wide receivers, the guys that everybody took in the first round of their fantasy drafts, Tyreek Hill and Chase and Lamb. I mean, not that they've been bad, but they have not been blow your doors off. So right. I can get on board that A.J. Brown has had the best season of any wide receiver. I'm there with that, even though he missed a little time. And boy, it's not exactly what DiBiase said, but boy, is their offense different when he's in and out. The fact that he missed time maybe even better displays his value. That they're a much, much better football team. Could he be Offensive Player of the Year? There kind of is one of those awards, by the way. Rarely do they give that to quarterbacks now. I think he could be in the running. I would give it to Derrick Henry over him. Derrick Henry's on track to set rushing records and be the all-time leading rusher and do crazy things. And I think Henry even has a case to be league MVP. But right now, to me, it's Lamar, Josh Allen, Jared Goff in some order. You know what? I will go along with you on that. I'll tell you this, though. I do like Saquon Barkley's numbers, too. Yeah, in 7 games, 766 yards. I said this on my local show, and I'm going to bring this up because I do agree with you with the 2 guys from Baltimore. Has there ever been a year like this where 2 running backs hit free agency and were tailor-made
for the teams that they're playing for other than Saquon. I mean, he is their identity, correct?
Yeah.
And he played, college ball in the state of Pennsylvania. And then you're looking at Derrick Henry. If you could have gone back in a lab and said, give Lamar Jackson a running back, that's exactly who it was supposed to be. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Both of those guys being in the MVP consideration kind of looks like a little bit of a shift, especially when you look at Mahomes' numbers. They aren't that great. And you look at Josh Allen's numbers, they aren't that great. The league really has, right before our eyes, Matt, changed back until it almost looked like the NFC East of the 80s again.
Yeah, it's a great point. And especially at their guys' age, the analytics will tell you these guys are going to hit the cliff. 27's that magic number that running backs fall off a cliff, and they're as good as ever. I thought Henry was really good last year behind a terrible offensive line. And frankly, I just think he's different than everybody else. Every year I question, is he going to hit a cliff? And he never, ever does.
Never does.
They don't even throw the ball to Barkley. I mean, we know how good a receiver he is, but Hurts is going to tuck in and run as opposed to use outlet, running back stuff. And he also doesn't get the goal line carries because of Hurts. So, I mean, imagine what his numbers would be even in a different environment. But you're 100% right. They took good offenses up to another level for sure. And in Lamar's career, I don't have the exact number, but running backs that play with Lamar, they average in his career like 5.5 yards per carry.
Unreal.
And like Dobbins is a good player, but he's not Henry. He's not Barkley. Gus the Bus is just a dude. So now you put a good back there, that defenses have to key on both those dudes, and he's ripping it apart. I mean, it's a great formula.
It is a great formula. And you look at Pittsburgh, you look at Denver, you look at all of these teams having this success. You even look at Green Bay. They had to do it by default because their quarterback got banged up a couple of times. He's hurt right now. You look at Detroit, and then you have to go down to Miami and look at the Dolphins and the way that they're constructed. And you said last week, I forgot what you said, they got a whole bunch of Ferraris. They need a dump truck. Well,
right.
Well, they got their pilot back, and their games, they still lost last week. And I listened to Joe Marino of the Bills. We talked about the Bills and Dolphins playing in a big game this week. And you'll hear Kyle Krabs talk about the rust that has to be worked off of Tua Tagovailoa.
Tua Tagovailoa returned to action last week against the Arizona Cardinals. Very simple. How did he look, and what did it mean for the Dolphins offense?
Yeah, obviously, well, you scored more points than any game this season, so that's a great start to move the ball, score 27 points. They had a couple opportunities late in the game to kind of put the game away and didn't get it done. And it was a contributing factor to Miami losing a game against Arizona, which they had a double-digit lead for the second consecutive game and couldn't close the game. But for Tua in general, I thought you saw some general rust, more so from like a physical and a mechanics standpoint as compared to a decision-making standpoint. I thought he was very sharp and crisp and made a lot of quick decisions with the football, had a lot of good accuracy throws with his timing stuff. Took a deep shot down the left sideline late to Tyreek Hill that I think if Tua was more in the rhythm of his season, he would have got to it faster. He wouldn't have been so late. He wouldn't have reverted back to some of the old throwing mechanics. He spent a lot of time with a throwing coach this offseason in an effort to get more efficient with his delivery. And
Matt, I don't know that even if he comes back and he doesn't have, I sit there and watch those games and it scares me, when I see him play. Even if he doesn't have a setback, I just think the team and their approach is soft. And I think what he did this week when he went off on that reporter talking about, he was the second guy to do it. Diggs did it first. Y'all can't do this, or y'all sitting on your couch. You know what? I also can't paint bridges, and I can't clean windows of a high rise. I wouldn't do that either. And I saw a dude building the Empire State Building was sitting on a beam 100 stories up eating a lunch sandwich. I can't do that either. I really hate when NFL players do that. And to me, those comments made the whole team look soft, and I think Miami's soft, and that's why they ain't going nowhere.
I tend to agree. And I really felt like last week, rust or not, was the game you had to have. That was a very winnable game. You had all your horses, give or take. And now you have Buffalo, and I opened the show saying Cincy, Miami, the Jets, are they buyers or sellers on Tuesday? I think you have to get this one to even consider being a non-seller. And, we kind of talked about this earlier. I mean, it's the whole Ferrari thing. Ferraris don't run well in the snow and the weather. And I mean, the history shows that Miami always, under this coaching staff and how they're currently built, always plays better earlier the season. And they didn't put any money in the bank like they usually do. Usually December's ugly, and there's nothing in the bank. I mean, what's the chances of them in the AFC East, excelling in December? I don't see it.
Yeah, and people have to remember this. Even last year, they didn't play well against teams that were really good and that were really physical.
Right.
Mike Vrabel went there and smacked them around on their own home field while they had all of their players. So, and they had a real bad team. All right, we'll get to our game of the week. It's another battle up north, and then we'll take a whip around the National Football League and let Matt do his magic in segment number 3 here on Locked On NFL. Today's show, of course, is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. And I love saying that because I love being associated with America's #1 sportsbook. And that is exactly what FanDuel is. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. You got to win, but you'll get those $150 on that $5 if you win that bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Matt, we're moving right on along. Big game in the North again between the Packers and the Lions. The first time it was with the Lions and the Vikings, and that one went down to the wire. There's some thought now that Jordan Love is going to try to give it a go. He hurt his groin against the Jaguars, played all game, and then Trayvon bumped him, and I guess he aggravated it. But it really doesn't matter whether or not he plays or not. But this, to me, the winner of this game might win that division.
Yeah, I'm really impressed. I think both these teams could win the Super Bowl, could represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, could win the division. Going to be crucial for the standings, obviously, but I think both these teams they may play 3 times this year. Who knows? They're both really good.
They're both really good. And Peter Bukowski seems to think, leave it up to Peter to find that one thing about Detroit. Everybody's loving on Detroit, like they can do no wrong. Peter found something. He thinks the Packers have a shot. Listen to this.
Everyone's picking the Detroit Lions against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau on Sunday. Here's how Green Bay can win. The Packers, and I've said this before, they can win any game where Jordan Love plays and Matt LaFleur is the coach. Well, Matt LaFleur is the coach, and if we assume Jordan Love plays, the Packers are going to have a chance in this game. But it doesn't, for me, start with Jordan Love. This run defense, we talked about it yesterday with Matt Derry, has been excellent. They're top 10 in DVOA, they're top 10 in EPA per rush. But over the last 2 weeks, since Aiden Hutchinson got hurt, we talk about Aiden Hutchinson and his impact on the pass rush. But over the last 2 weeks, running backs, so we're going to take out quarterback scrambles and the specials and that stuff. Running backs are averaging over 5 yards a carry against the Detroit Lions.
I did not know that. I watched a lot of their film and watched a lot of their tape, and I appreciate Peter bringing up those advanced metrics. That's something that you could really, really take advantage of, even if Jordan Love isn't back there and you have Malik Willis. If they can't stop the run, you just got to make sure you don't let them score too many points, and you can keep it close and kind of change the tenor of that game.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And I also don't love that they don't have Jameson Williams, who continues to find ways to not get on the field, which is bizarre. That being said, Peter, if you look at last week's game, didn't they beat the Titans by 100? Was that draws when they're? I'd have to go watch every run, but
yeah,
is that Pollard getting 8 yards on 3rd and 15 when they're losing by 40? You know what I mean? Like, they certainly didn't dominate the game on the ground, Tennessee, against Detroit.
Right.
Although I do think this is a better run game.
No, I do think it's a better run game. When somebody's good, man, you gotta wish and grab for anything you can grab a
Sure.
hold of to try to figure it out. But no, I do agree with you. And there's two more teams that play defense the way defense is supposed to be played. Green Bay has invested a lot in their front seven, and it's finally starting to come around with a lot of those pieces and a lot of their depth on the defensive side of the football. All right, quick rip around the league. Let's start right there with that game, the game of the week, man. Who do you suspect has the upper hand in that game?
I like Detroit in this game just because I think their offensive line, their running game travels. That they can control the game with two really good backs. And I adore Jordan Love, but just watching him, I have my doubts if he'll finish this game. I bet he starts it, but then that groin starts acting up and, he'll fight through it. I don't know that you're going to get him for 60 minutes.
Yeah, that ball has to come out of his hand really, really quick. And when
Yeah.
you start doing that and they know you're doing it out of necessity, that's when those DBs start jumping routes. And Brian Branch can do that real well. If he's healthy, he can really get it. All right, let's go from two good teams to two bad ones as we whip around the National Football League. What do you think about Saints Panthers?
Wow. I can't get behind the Panthers in any way, shape, or form. I'm not impressed with the Saints, but these are two of the absolute worst teams in the league. But Carolina's a distant 32.
Somebody got to win, somebody got to lose, man.
Yeah.
Wild game in Washington last week. Now they go on the road to go to MetLife to play the Giants.
Yeah, and I think the Giants could be scrappy, but I think Washington wins this game. They run the ball well. Their defense is better than I thought. Big quarterback advantage.
Yep. Those soft Dolphins go up to travel to Buffalo. That's not a place for a soft team to play this time of year.
No, and I think Amari Cooper gets more and more acclimated. I think the Bills are one of the most physical teams in the league. 6 offensive linemen, run the ball, big power quarterback. I think they win this one handily.
And my guy, Keon Coleman, man, I told people, I told Marino and everybody, I said, it's something about him. I can't put my finger on it. It's just like once he gets out there and gets used to stuff, you just watch. He's just going to show up every single week and do something. Chargers traveling to Cleveland to play the Browns.
This would be a rock fight. I think the Browns defense is back. I'm a Winston believer, but I think it's an underreported story how well Herbert's playing. I think the Chargers win this in a really low-scoring game.
I think there's a misconception that he's not putting up good numbers. He is. He's actually,
he looks great.
This is not as conservative as people think it is. All right, Patriots and Titans. Yeah.
I'll take New England. I don't think we're going to see Drake May, but I don't think the Titans are in a good spot at all. I don't feel confident about this game either. Yuck.
Yeah, that might be the Travis Hunter Bowl right there or something,
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, let's get to the Dallas Cowboys going to the Dirty Birds to play the Falcons.
I don't like where Dallas is at either. I don't think they'll stop the run at all. I think Atlanta has the better offense. Neither defense is impressive right now. Atlanta's at home. I think they win this by a touchdown plus.
Yep, I do too. I think they're going to win that division too. Raiders at Bengals. The Bengals need to win. If they don't win, they're going to be start looking towards next year.
Yeah, and the Raiders, I don't think are a formidable opponent. I mean, there's 6 or so really bad teams. A couple of them are playing each other, but I think the Raiders are right there with those 6, and Cincy should win this one at home without much resistance.
I wanted to say Denver might have been able to sneak up on Baltimore, but Baltimore got snuck up on by Cleveland last week. I don't think it's going to happen 2 years in a row, two weeks in a row as they host the Broncos in Baltimore.
Yeah, we were talking MVP earlier, but they lost the Raiders and they lost the Browns. I mean, that's not a ringing endorsement for MVPs. I think that they take it out on Denver, though. Denver is good at both lines of scrimmage. They might keep this thing close, but I bet the second half belongs to Baltimore.
No doubt about it. Bears have to try to overcome that win and those scrappy Cardinals. Hey man, look, the Cardinals aren't a super talented team on defense, but sometimes they figure out a way to give you a hard time.
Yeah, this could be a really good game with wild card implications. I like the Bears on the road. I don't think it's a tough place to play. I think their defense is the difference here, and Arizona's to me is just really lacking talent.
Absolutely. Doug Peterson, going back to Philly where it all started for him, he needs a win too. Jaguars and Eagles.
Yeah, they're so short on weapons. I guess, I mean, you know this better than I do, but it sounds like Brian Thomas news was better than we thought, but they're still depleted. And as we talked about with Barkley and A.J. Brown, I think you're getting the Eagles at the wrong time.
You are getting it. I hope that you're right, and I hope BTJ does play because just for the scout side of me, I want to see BTJ and Quinion Mitchell just go one-on-one. I love rookie matchups. We already talked about Lions, Packers, Colts, and Vikings.
I think Colts are in trouble. Yeah, but I mean, Flacco's going to play, and that's great. And I think the Vikings are coming back to earth a little bit. But, boy, that's a brutal place to play. And I think Minnesota kind of turns things around a little bit here.
We'll be back Monday, but I won't see you before this game. So do the Bucs, with all their injuries at wide receiver, they don't have a chance in Arrowhead, if you ask me.
I don't think so either. But, I mean, just looking at the spreads, I think they're like an 8 or 9 point dog. Their offensive line has been as good as any in the league. I think that they can keep it close, and the Chiefs don't blow people away. I still think Kansas City wins, though.
The Bucs are the team that I always look at when teams struggle with their offensive line for like 5 years in a row. And I'm like, they fixed their offensive line in 1.5 off seasons. Why can't everybody else do that? Now, everybody doesn't have Christian Wirfs to start. Tristan Wirfs, he's great, but still, they fixed a whole unit of their team in about 1.5 years, and other teams seems like the Jaguars seem like they want to struggle with that forever. All right, man, it's Friday. Y'all know that's when Matt Williamson comes through here on Locked On NFL. Make sure you tap in Monday morning for Tyler Rowland early in the morning to get a double shot of espresso, and then slide right back through the barbershop on the new Locked On NFL. 2 shows all in the same day, wherever you get your podcast and over on the Locked On NFL YouTube page. Man, have a good weekend. Don't be sitting up watching film, man. Try to relax, man. Don't be looking at all that, all 22 all weekend. Because I know you can't get away. Yeah, man. I know you can't get away from it. All right, for Matt Williamson, Tony Wiggins here on Locked On NFL. Y'all take care. We'll see you next time.